While you sleep, while the world keeps scrolling through their phone feeds, something is happening that should make every human being stop and pay attention. In the final days of February 2026, Israel and the United States launched coordinated attacks against Iran. The supreme leader of Iran has been eliminated. Tehran is in flames. Missiles cross the Middle Eastern sky like rain. The Persian Gulf has become a battlefield, and at the exact moment all this was happening, the moon turned red as blood. On March 3rd, 2026, the last total lunar eclipse that Earth will witness until 2028 occurred, the so-called blood moon. And I need to ask you something. Do you really think all of this is just a coincidence? If you're new here, subscribe to the channel now, because this kind of content connecting biblical prophecy with events happening live in real time is exactly what we do here. And what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes could completely change the way you see the world. Part 1. The blood moon and the prophecy of Joel. Let's start with the most obvious and at the same time what almost no one is truly connecting. The prophet Joel, in chapter 2 of his book, verses 30 and 31, wrote something that echoes through the centuries. He said that in the last days God would cause wonders to appear in the heavens and on the earth. Blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. The sun would be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Now pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. Joel's description isn't just poetic, it's surgical. He mentions three elements: blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. In the last few days, literally in the last few days, what has the world witnessed? Satellite images of Tehran show pillars of smoke rising into the sky following the Israeli and American attacks. Blood is being shed on a scale we haven't seen since the last major war in the Middle East. And the moon turned red. NASA confirmed that the total lunar eclipse of March 3rd, 2026 reached totality around 11:33 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time. The moon turned completely red for nearly an hour. A phenomenon caused by the refraction of sunlight through Earth's atmosphere. Scientifically explainable, yes, but biblically, prophetically, it's impossible to ignore the synchronicity. And there's more. This was the last total lunar eclipse before 2028. The next one will only happen at the turn of the year from 2028 to 2029. We are literally in a period of lunar darkness with no blood moon for over 2 years, as if God had placed a giant exclamation point at this exact moment in history. Part 2, Persia, or a problem in Ezekiel's prophecy. Now comes the part that will give you chills because it involves one of the most specific prophecies in the entire Bible. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 5. In this text, the prophet describes a great coalition of nations that would rise up against Israel in the last days. And the first nation mentioned in this coalition, the first, not the second, not the third, is Persia. Persia. Do you know what the ancient name of Iran is? It's Persia. Iran only officially changed its name to Iran in 1935. Before that, for millennia, that land was called Persia. It's the same Persia of Esther, the same Persia of Daniel, the same Persia of Cyrus the Great. And what has happened in recent days? An Israel and United States coalition launched massive attacks against Iran, Persia. Supreme leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the initial attacks on February 28. Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, Kermanshah, historic cities of Persia being bombed, Iranian ships being sunk, missiles and drones crossing borders. Now I know what someone might think, but Ezekiel 38 speaks of Persia attacking Israel, not being attacked. And that is true. But understand one fundamental thing about biblical prophecy. Before an enemy rises to fulfill the prophetic role assigned to them, there is always a process, an escalation, a trigger. And what we are seeing now could be exactly the trigger that the Bible describes. When a leader is eliminated, when a country is militarily humiliated, the thirst for revenge becomes the fuel for the next onslaught. And that leads me to the question that few are asking. What happens when Iran, supported by its allies Russia, Turkey, Libya, Ethiopia, all mentioned in Ezekiel 38, decides that the time has come for a definitive response against Israel? If this content is making sense to you, give us a hand, leave a like now, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Every share makes a difference for the algorithm to deliver this video to more people. Part 3, the Hebrew year 5786. Now I want to show you something that almost no one is talking about. And when I say almost no one, it's because this requires a level of research that goes beyond the surface. In the Hebrew calendar, we are living in the year 5786. For those who don't know, the Jewish calendar counts years from the creation of the world according to rabbinic tradition. And this number, 5786, carries something extraordinary when analyzed through gematria, the Hebrew numerical system where each letter has a value. The number 786, which is the final part of the Hebrew year, when represented by the corresponding Hebrew letters, forms the word Pe Vav. And the numerical value of Pe is 80, while Vav is 6. Together these letters form a symbol that in Jewish tradition is associated with the mouth. P literally means mouth. It is the year of God's mouth speaking, the year in which the prophetic word gains a voice, the year in which what was sealed is being opened. And that is exactly what Daniel chapter 12 verse 4 prophesied when it said, "But you, Daniel, shut up these words and seal this book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." We are living in the time when the seals are being opened. Prophetic knowledge that remained obscure for centuries is becoming clear as never before. Think with me. At no other time in human history have we had such capacity to access information, compare ancient texts, analyze numerical patterns, verify astronomical data, and cross-reference all of this with geopolitical events in real time. The artificial intelligence we are using today to translate languages and process data is, in itself, a fulfillment of this prophecy. Knowledge has multiplied in a way that no previous generation ever imagined. Part 4, Matthew 24, the checklist. Now let's do something I like to call a prophetic checklist. Let's open Matthew chapter 24 and see how many of the signs described by Jesus are happening right now. Verses 6 and 7. Wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Do I need to comment? At this very moment, Israel and the United States are in open war against Iran. Attacks in Tehran, Isfahan, with Iran retaliating with missiles against targets in the Gulf. The American embassy in Riyadh was hit by drones. NATO intercepted an Iranian missile heading for Turkey. We are at a level of conflict we haven't seen in decades. Verse 7, second part, famines and earthquakes in various places. Earthquakes have increased in frequency and intensity in recent years. Food crises are spreading through Africa and the Middle East. The price of oil has skyrocketed since the start of the conflict, and with it, the cost of everything. Verse 9, you will be hated by all nations because of my name. The persecution of Christians has reached record levels globally. Reports indicate that more than 360 million Christians live in countries where they suffer severe persecution. Verse 11, many false prophets will arise and will deceive many. We are in a time where spiritual confusion is massive. Movements that mix spirituality with consumerism, false teachers who accumulate followers at the expense of a diluted gospel. Verse 12, because iniquity will multiply, the love of many will grow cold. Look around you. Emotional coldness, indifference, the normalization of violence, moral desensitization. People scroll through their feeds and see images of war as if it were entertainment. Empathy has been replaced by apathy. Love for others has been replaced by self-love. Isn't that exactly what we're seeing? Isn't that what Jesus described with surgical precision 2,000 years ago? Verse 14, and this is perhaps the most important of all. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. With the internet, with instant translations, with artificial intelligence translating sermons in real time into hundreds of languages, we are closer to the fulfillment of this verse than any other generation in human history. Part 5, 1 Thessalonians and the cry of peace. There's a verse that's been burning in my mind since this war began. First letter to the Thessalonians, chapter 5, verse 3. When they say, there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, like labor pains to a woman who is pregnant, and they will by no means escape. You know what's scary? In the days leading up to the attacks on Iran, what were world leaders doing? Negotiating peace, literally. On February 25th, the foreign minister of Iran spoke publicly about a historic agreement that was being negotiated with the United States. 3 days later, the bombs began to fall. While they were saying peace and security, destruction came suddenly. And it wasn't just any destruction. It was a military operation for regime change. The supreme leader eliminated, military infrastructure devastated, entire cities under bombardment. Destruction came like labor pains, fast, intense, and impossible to ignore. And Paul uses this image of birth pains in a very intentional way. Birth pains do not stop once they have begun. They intensify, they become more frequent, they get stronger, until something new is born. And Jesus used exactly the same analogy in Matthew 24 verse 8 when he said that wars, famines, and earthquakes are the beginning of sorrows, in Greek odinos, which literally means birth pains. In other words, what we are living through now is not the end, it is the beginning of the pains. And if the beginning is already like this, with open war between powers, blood moons, columns of smoke over the Middle East, imagine what comes next. Part 6. The 6,000-year theory. There is a very ancient tradition in both Judaism and early Christianity, which says that human history would last 6,000 years, followed by 1,000 years of rest. Just as God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh, humanity would have 6,000 years of history before the millennium of peace. The Talmud in the Sanhedrin Tractate mentions this idea. The early church fathers like Irenaeus and Hippolytus also spoke about it. The idea is simple: from Adam to Abraham, 2,000 years. From Abraham to the Messiah, 2,000 years. From the Messiah to the end, 2,000 years. If the Messianic era began with the ministry of Jesus around the year 30 of the Common Era, then 2,000 years would take us to approximately the year 2030. And if the Great Tribulation, which according to Daniel and Revelation lasts 7 years, begins before the final return, subtracting 7 years from 2030, we arrive at 2023. But if we consider the crucifixion as the milestone which many scholars place in the year 33, then the count points to 2033, with the tribulation beginning in 2026. I need to be very transparent with you. I am not setting a date. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24 verse 36 that of that day and hour no one knows. And I take that word seriously. But Jesus also said in the parable of the fig tree that when we see all these things happening, we should know that it is near, at the doors. He told us to observe the signs. He told us to be attentive, and that is exactly what we are doing here. What 2026 represents, in my view, is not a date for the end of the world. It is a point of convergence, a moment when so many signs align simultaneously that it would be irresponsible not to pay attention. Part 7. Jeremiah's prophecy about Persia. Now I want to take you to a text that very few people connect with what is happening now. Jeremiah chapter 49 verses 34 to 39. In this passage, Jeremiah prophesies specifically against Elam. And who is Elam? Elam is one of the historical provinces of ancient Persia. Its capital was Susa, the same Susa from the book of Esther, the same Susa where Daniel had his visions. Elam corresponds to the southwestern region of modern Iran. And what does the prophecy say? Jeremiah declares that God would break the bow of Elam, the main strength of its power, that he would bring upon Elam the four winds from the four corners of heaven, meaning enemies from all directions, that he would scatter them to all nations, and that he would set his throne in Elam, and destroy from there the king and the princes. Now reread this prophecy thinking about the events of the last week. The supreme leader of Iran eliminated, military infrastructure being destroyed from multiple directions, by Israel on one side and by the United States on the other. Attacks coming from all directions. Four winds, four corners, Iranians fleeing, seeking refuge in other countries. It is impossible to read Jeremiah 49 and not feel a chill down your spine with what is happening now. But verse 39 brings something that many people ignore. Jeremiah ends by saying, "But it shall come to pass in the latter days that I will restore the captives of Elam, says the Lord." There is restoration promised. There is hope even for Iran. And that is beautiful because it shows that God's heart is not one of destruction but of redemption. Part 8. The pattern of Jubilees in 1948. Now let me show you a numerical pattern that will blow your mind. In 1948, Israel was reborn as a nation. After almost 2,000 years dispersed among the nations, the Jewish people returned to their land and declared independence on May 14th of that year. This in itself is one of the greatest prophetic miracles in history, because Isaiah chapter 66 verse 8 asks, "Who has ever heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Can a land be born in a single day? Can a nation be born all at once?" And the answer is yes, it happened in 1948. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, verses 32 to 34, in the parable of the fig tree, "When its branch becomes tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So also you, when you see all these things, know that he is near, at the doors. Truly I say to you that this generation will not pass away until all these things happen." The fig tree throughout the Bible is a symbol of Israel. The branch that sprouted is the rebirth of the nation. And what is a biblical generation? Psalm 90 verse 10 says that the days of our lives are 70 years, or 80 if there is strength. 70 years from 1948 brings us to 2018. 80 years brings us to 2028. We are right in the middle of this window, and if the 7-year tribulation period must happen within this generation, then the beginning could be right now. Part 9, the Convergence of 2026. So let's recap what we have on our hands at this moment. In 2026, we are seeing a convergence of signs that is, at the very least, unprecedented in the modern era. We have the blood moon of March 3rd, the last total lunar eclipse until 2028, happening at the exact moment a war breaks out between Israel and Persia, just as Ezekiel and Jeremiah prophesied. We have the Hebrew year 5786, the year of the mouth of God, pointing to prophetic revelation. We have the 6,000-year theory indicating that we are in the final window of human history. We have the parable of the fig tree telling us that the generation that saw Israel reborn will not pass away until all is fulfilled. We have Matthew 24 being fulfilled point by point before our very eyes. And we have 1 Thessalonians 5 being fulfilled literally, peace being promised, and destruction coming suddenly. And I haven't even mentioned Isaiah chapter 17 verse 1, which says, "Behold, Damascus will cease from being a city and will be a ruinous heap." Damascus, the capital of Syria, which is just a few hundred kilometers from the current conflict zone. With Israeli attacks extending to Lebanon and Hezbollah targets being bombed again, the instability in the region is a powder keg. Damascus has never ceased to be an inhabited city. In all of human history, it is considered the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. The prophecy of Isaiah 17 has not yet been fulfilled, and with each passing day the possibility becomes more real. And we have something that is perhaps the most disturbing of all. Most people are not paying attention. They are distracted, they are busy, they are entertained, they are scrolling through feeds while the world trembles beneath their feet. Exactly as Jesus described in Matthew chapter 24 verses 37 to 39, when he compared the last days to the days of Noah. They ate, they drank, they married, and were given in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark, and they did not realize until the flood came and took them all away. Noah preached for 120 years. People laughed, they mocked, and they ignored him. And when the rain started, it was already too late. The prophecy that everyone ignored isn't a specific prediction of a date. The prophecy everyone ignored is the whole pattern, the set, the convergence. It's all these signs happening at once, in the same generation, pointing in the same direction, and most people simply aren't seeing it. I'm going to end this video with something from my heart, not just my research. If all this is true, and I believe the signs are undeniable, then the key question isn't when is Jesus coming back? The most important question is, are you ready? Because the Bible didn't give us prophecies to satisfy our curiosity. It gave us prophecies to prepare us. Every sign is an invitation. Every prophetic fulfillment is a chance to decide. Revelation chapter 3 verse 20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him and he with me." Jesus isn't knocking on the door of the world. He's knocking on the door of your heart, and he is patient. But God's patience has a limit set by his own word, and the signs tell us that this limit is approaching. Do you know what impresses me most about all this? It's that God doesn't need us to fulfill his prophecies. They will be fulfilled with or without our participation. The eclipse happens regardless of whether we believe in it. War happens regardless of whether we pay attention. Nations align regardless of whether we watch the news. But God, in His grace, gave us these signs as an act of love, like a father warning his children before the storm arrives. He doesn't want anyone to be caught by surprise. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 9 says the Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, but is patient with us, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. If you've never given your life to Christ, this is the moment. If you've wandered away, this is the moment to return. If you're living a lukewarm, settled, comfortable faith, this is the time to light the fire again, because the signs don't lie. The heavens are speaking, the earth is shaking, the nations are aligning, and the King is coming back. If this video touched your heart, if it makes sense to you, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your family, your friends, with that person you know needs to hear this, and comment below. Do you believe we're living in the last days? I want to know your opinion. In the next video, I'll dive even deeper into the prophecy of Ezekiel 38 and 39, the war of Gog and Magog, and show how this week's events may be setting the stage for the greatest prophetic conflict in history. You won't want to miss it. May God bless you, keep you, and give you eyes to see what is before us.